1993, right before 1993, several years after I got out of prison, Laura and I were probably together about 8-9 months, and got pregnant.
I didn't want to live with them because I told them I had gone to I was a Catholic, and I had said, "Oh, nothing anyone I've ever seen that lives together, it never works out." But we moved in, and I found out I was pregnant, and we had a son, and he was working at the time, but we would drink every weekend, we'd party every weekend, and to the point where he had lost his job.
Part of it was because on the weekends, my partying on the weekends became my partying on the weekdays. And then from drinking, of course, I would always go back to drugs, and I was using. And we had moved from one a duplex house we were living at in San Fernando into a townhouse in Pacoima, which is basically smack dab in the middle of my neighborhood, almost, not far from there. And that time I had my younger brother living with, my younger brother was living with us, and we were supposedly taking care of him. And, well, we were trying at least. And I was using drugs with him. We were running the streets together. And because I lost my job and I couldn't find another job, I was having difficulties, I started selling drugs. And in the process of selling drugs, I was probably, I was using more drugs than I was using to support my family. So really it was my father-in-law and Laura supporting us at that time. And this thing happened in 1993. October 31st, 1993, there was 4 pastors from 2 different churches in the valley, one of them being the Church on the Way, another one, Victory Outreach, talked to us gang members, a couple gang members, about having a peace truce between the 75 Latin gangs in the valley. And so, I'd always believed we could have peace because I'd been to prison, and everybody that I know that had really done time in prison said, we're forced to get along there, why can't we get along out here? So I really believed in that and said, well, I'll participate as much as I had some influence in my gang that I was able to be their spokesperson, me and my older brother. And so we were doing that for a couple months. One night, I want to say it was early February, mid-February, there was a peace truce meeting at one of the leaders of the peace truce's home. And we're there, and they're just talking, and we're talking about trying to get the gangs to negotiate, because what would happen if we didn't have this peace truce is generally that either led to a shooting or fights. So it was, okay, let's try to resolve these situations in a different format and teach a different way of communicating the situation. So we went in there, and we met, and it was over, and everybody was leaving, and I probably about 3 or 4 times walked to my car that night. And I just remember I'd walk to my car, I'd walk back to the front door. I walked to my car, walk back to the front door. And the last time I said, I'm just going to go back, and I want to just hang out with these guys. I want to hear what they have to say. I was really glued to the things that what were going on. And I'm hearing them talk about Jesus, prayer, and the things they have to do in order for this to work, because they couldn't do it just on their own skills, their own personalities. And then one of them tells me, hey, do you want to accept the Lord? And when I was in juvenile hall, when I was 14, 15, I had accepted Christ. But actually I was 16, and I accepted Christ, but I never made the commitment. Because I used to tell God, hey, God, I'll give myself to you when I got everything all together, right? It's like when I'm ready. And so at this time, my life was falling apart at home. I was out going around. I was doing the life that my family had always done. I was taught that, all men were womanizers, so that's what I would be. It was just how men were. And so that's what I was going to do. And that and then the drug addictions, I had family members that both sides of our family, mine and Laura's, we have drug addicted, a history of drug addiction. But I remember, we had our son. I think his brother going to be a year old. He might have just been a year. And seeing a picture of him hating me was the first picture I saw the last time I walked to the car. And the second one is that he would be just like me. And it was like, wow, I can't do that. And that's what drew me, I think part of what drew me back into the house, to hear from these men. And so when he asked that, it wasn't like, okay, do I or don't I? I needed Jesus. And I knew that something had to change in my life. You know, I had already started talking to a drug counselor about, you know, not using drugs anymore. I needed that finality in my life. And I accepted Christ. And not far from then, I remember I went home that night. And Laura was asleep. And I woke her up and I said, let me tell you some great news, right? The guys told me, go and share with her what happened. She'll be so happy.
And one night, I hadn't seen him for 3 days. And he came home and he said, he woke me up in the middle of the night and he said, guess what? Guess what? I have great news. I found Jesus. I gave my life to the Lord. And I'm like, what? Now you want to bring God into this after all of this? I thought he was making an excuse because he hadn't been home for 3 days.
You know, things are going to change and things are going to be great. And she goes, what? All of a sudden now you want God into our life? I mean, as many times as I've asked you to go to church.
He wanted me to go to church with them, and he said, well, they said that we need to get married. And I'm like, well, if they want you to get married so bad, they need to marry you because I don't want to marry you.
And I was like, oh, okay. I don't remember how I reacted, but I know it was kind of like, okay, I'm like telling you there's good news and you're not very happy. And, you know, rightfully so. I mean, I used to come home, I was not physically abusive, but I was very verbally abusive, and I mistreated her in many ways. And, you know, when we had money, like the previous Easter, I actually used our Easter money for drugs. You know, I went out and partied for 2 nights in a row, or 3 nights I think it was, and didn't come home. So, I mean, for her to hear, oh, okay, Jesus is going to make everything better, you know. But immediately after, you know, within the 2-3 weeks, Donald Garcia, who's one of the members who was there, one of the representatives and actually a member of our church, kept saying, hey, you know, let me know and you can meet us at church, you know, we'll pick you up. And he picked us up a couple of times and took us to church. Then, you know, I fixed my car and we started just visiting the church on the way at that time when we were in Van Nuys. And, you know, just things started to happen. Things started to change.
We visited church on the way, and it felt really different. Everyone was really friendly and nice. I thought I was going to be there being judged, and I thought they're all going to know I'm not a Christian. And but everyone was really nice, and I just felt something really different and special there that I had never experienced before.
You know, it was hard. It was instantaneous for us. I know it's not for everybody, but it was for us. Things just we understood enough that we wanted the change. About a year later, we decided, you know, we needed to get married. At the unction of some people, we knew, you know, God doesn't like us to live in sin. So we're like, okay, we know it was true. So we went to pre-marriage.
When we went through the whole class of pre-marriage, then did I realize, oh my gosh, this is the guy I want to marry. This is who I love. And I began to see a difference in Alex. He was home more. He had gotten He had gotten back to work. He stopped using drugs. He went to drug counseling, and I saw such a change in him immediately, and it made me want to change. And so a year later, we had gotten married, and from then on, our lives has changed so much. We both have served here at church, and are raising our kids in the Lord. And it's been such a big change because it's like we're learning first generation. None of our family are Christians. And slowly but surely, they're all coming to the Lord. And it's been great. Just the other day, my kids were asking me, what was the worst date my dad ever took you on? I'm like, well, when he used to sell drugs, he took me to a drug house. And I just sat there and I was so bored. And they're like, one of my kids laughed. The other one had this look on her face like she couldn't believe it. She was really perplexed. Like, how could you say that about my dad? And then I just thought, wow, this is a teaching moment. I'm like, look what God has done in our lives, that you can't even imagine your father being on drugs, selling drugs, or being in a gang. You can't even imagine anything like that. Look what he's done for our lives. It's been changed so much. And we're just still continue to look forward to what he's done for us and continues to do for us.